defenseless borders of the south became a gateway for infiltrators and murderers. From their bases in the Gaza Strip, the Egyptians threatened to intensify their attacks on all the villages and new immigrant settlements on the borders. They destroyed property. They sabotaged traffic. They took their toll of lives. Like their ancestors of old, Israel's tillers of the soil recall the ancient verse, with one of his hands wrought in the work, and with the other hand held a weapon. Even children in the kindergartens were forced to play under. The chief of staff and staff officers follow the advance of our army. After a sea battle near the shores of Haifa, the Egyptian destroyer Ibrahim el-Awwal surrendered to the Israel Navy and is towed into Haifa port. The Egyptian warship, which attempted to bombard Haifa, was damaged in a joint action by the Israel Navy and Air Force. About 200 officers and men were taken prisoner. These are some of the belongings of the prisoners. As the ship drew near to Haifa harbor, the flag of the Israel Navy is hoisted on it. The Sinai Peninsula, 3 times the size of Israel, was completely conquered within 6 days, a brilliant military campaign with only few to equal it in the history of peoples. The joy of victory is reflected throughout all ranks, officers, soldiers, reservists, and conscripts. Our forces reached a distance of 6 miles from the Suez Canal, and they gaze upon the town of Ismailia, situated on its banks. Abu Agela, where one of the fiercest battles took place. Here the Egyptians were entrenched in fortified positions. And this is one of the Egyptian army flags which fell into our hands. This is the town of Rafah, the old mandatory border between Israel and Egypt. In camps at Rafah, thousands of members of Haganah were imprisoned during mandatory days after the ill-famed Black Saturday. In the railway station at Rafah, the Egyptians left behind valuable freight. El Arish, the capital of the Sinai Peninsula, in which the majority of the inhabitants of Sinai live. Once Britain suggested this area as a Jewish state. Today it has surrendered to Israel's defense forces. Gaza was liberated in the final stages of the battle. This southern port is now clear and ready to serve the Israel Navy. The city of Gaza now looks to a future of peace. Commercial life, which was paralyzed during the first few days after the liberation of Gaza, returns to normal, and once again Gaza becomes the center of business for the area. Khan Yunis, the Israel Defense Army also took the ancient fortress built 700 years ago by the Mameluke Emir Yunus, after whom the town is named. This is the Khan Yunis police station, the Fedayeen murder gang's headquarters, which was blown up by Israel's forces about a year ago. On the 6th and last day of the campaign, after crossing the long and mountainous route through the country where the law was given, an Israel unit reached Mifratz Shlomo, Solomon's Bay. At the same time, the two islands of Tiran and Snapir, which had blocked the entrance to the Gulf of Eilat, were liberated, and thus Israel's southern gateway was opened. This is Solomon's Bay, Sharm el-Sheikh, which lies at the most southern point of the Sinai Peninsula. More than 5,000 prisoners of war fell into the hands of Israel Defense Army during the campaign, thus proving that in spite of having the most modern equipment, the Egyptian soldier lacked a purpose in his fight against Israel. Amongst the captives were many high officers, and they were happy to have been left alive. The booty was tremendous, proof of the intention of the Egyptians to attack Israel as soon as possible. Vast quantities of undamaged vehicles were abandoned. Light, medium and heavy tanks amongst the equipment captured. Various types of artillery. Ammunition of all kinds was found on the roadsides and in the camps and fortifications. In the railway stations, too, were found hundreds of tons of valuable ammunition. Shells, guns and mortars. In the open sandy wastes of the desert, vast stores were found filled to capacity with arms and ammunition. In subterranean fortifications amongst the sand dunes, thousands of barrels of fuel were found, hermetically sealed against all weather. The Israel Defense Forces collect the equipment and add the still usable tanks to their own armored units. The abandoned equipment is taken northwards from Sinai. Many guests and journalists reach Mifratz Shlomo, Solomon's Bay, and are received by Brigadier Jaffe, commander of the unit which reached the bay. Meanwhile, soldiers of the unit record greetings home through the Army Broadcasting Service and Kol Israel, the Voice of Israel, after being completely cut off from their families and friends. A ceremonial parade in the presence of General Dayan and the late Brigadier Asaf Simchoni, who came to greet the unit. The soldiers listen attentively to the words of their commander, who praised the courage of the men who in 6 days crossed the route over which Moses, our ancestor, had taken 40 years. General Moshe Dayan reads a message from the Minister of Defense, David Ben-Gurion, in which he thanks the men of the unit for opening the gateway to Eilat. After the end of hostilities, the President of the state, Mr. Yitzhak Ben-Zvi, makes a tour of Sinai in an Israel Air Force plane. This is the oil town of Ras Sudar. The plane approaches Artur, a port on the western shore of the Sinai Peninsula, which fell to the Israel Defense Forces during the last days of the campaign. The President and his party receive information about Artur and its port. On the last stage of his tour, at Mifrat Shlomo, Solomon's Bay, the President is jubilantly received by officers and men of the unit which liberated the Gulf of Eilat. The first Israel ship, the Queen of Sheba, is anchored at Mifrat Shlomo. She is on her way from Central Africa to Eilat. The President boards the ship and makes a blessing on the occasion of witnessing the first boat to sail the direct route between Eilat and Africa. Life in Sinai and the Gaza Strip returns to normal. Arab refugees return to their homes, Bedouin to their camps, and peace reigns in the area held by the Israel Defense Forces. And Israel's border settlers breathe freely. From now on, they can give all their energies to work and peace.